No way this just happened. The New York Times, the same outlet that spent years shielding the left, just proved Leticia James fraud while pretending to save her. You really can't even make this stuff up. They thought that they were writing a puff piece, but instead they handed over the smoking gun. Now, think about that just for a second, okay? Trump's own prosecutor, the woman who built her career screaming, "No one is above the law," just got exposed by her own defenders. And the receipts, they're right there in black and white. So tonight, I want to go ahead and break down how the so-called paper of record, their legal cleanup crew at the lawfare, accidentally confessed her crimes to the entire country. They tried to spin the story, but the math just doesn't lie. The cover-up collapsed, and now every conservative, whoever said, "Oh, wait until the truth comes out," they're all laughing out loud right now. Now, stay tuned, guys, because what you're about to hear, this is going to change how you see the media forever. From the forged mortgage forms to the four-way property scam to the desperate fairy tale story that the Times used to humanize her, every piece of it is falling apart. So hit the like button, share this video, and buckle up because the New York Times just did the one thing that no one thought that they would ever do. They just proved Trump right. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's mid-October 2025, and Donald J. Trump, he's back in the White House. Gas prices are down, markets are up, and for the first time in years, the Department of Justice is actually doing its job. And yet, just when you think the swamp couldn't get any slimier, the New York Times detonates its own credibility, trying to protect one of their own, Leticia James. Now, this was supposed to be her redemption story, a poor, misunderstood public servant caught in the storm of Trump's America, right? But instead, the Times wrote the one article that exposed her entire scam. They called it "In the Eye of a Political Storm." But the only storm brewing was the one that was inside of her mortgage paperwork. And the irony, guys, the more they defended her, the more they proved her fraud. The paper of record didn't realize that they were creating a record of confession. In fact, it was kind of like watching a magician saw themselves in half, only this time it was the media that never recovers. So today I want to go ahead and pull back the curtain because the Times didn't just report on Leticia James. They documented her downfall. So I want to rewind just for a second. So you might be saying, well, who is Leticia James? She is the New York Attorney General who spent years obsessively going after chasing Donald Trump. Remember her campaign speech, "No one is above the law"? She built her entire career on that line, taking down Trump Tower brick by brick, on suing the Trump Organization, on becoming the progressive hero who would save democracy, right? Well, here's the plot twist. When the lights flipped back on in 2025, it wasn't Trump that was under indictment. It was her. So on October 9th, the very Department of Justice that she once weaponized came for her, charging Leticia James with bank fraud and false statements to a financial institution. So why does that matter politically? Because the woman who lectured America about integrity, who told us that financial misrepresentation was the crime of kings, was caught doing the very thing that she accused others of doing. And so now the same media who screamed "lock him up" for Trump, they're now whispering lullabies for her. Now, this isn't just hypocrisy, guys. This is poetic justice. The law that she tried to twist against Trump has magically circled back like a boomerang, and this time it is headed straight for her front door in Norfolk, Virginia. Now, Medicare is supposed to be your safety net, but for way too many, it feels like a trap. Now, this is why I partner with Chapter, because they make Medicare a net that you can trust, not a hole that you can fall through. Now, one of our viewers, she told us, she said, "Chapter gave me confidence my Medicare plan actually works for me." So let me ask, do you want uncertainty or do you want the confidence that most people already have? Now, most people, they're calling that phone number right there at the bottom of your screen, or they're visiting askchapter.org/Ron. That phone number again is 909-563-8279. They are the only advisors who review every plan nationwide and recommend what actually fits your needs. Now, on average, they have saved seniors $1,100 a year. The call is quick. Chapter can review your options in under 20 minutes. So let's go ahead and break this down. On October 9th, 2025, a federal grand jury in Virginia dropped a bombshell. New York Attorney General Leticia James was indicted for bank fraud and making false statements to a financial institution. Now, this wasn't a rumor. This wasn't political theater. It was paperwork. The case revolves around a single property, 3121 Perron Avenue in Norfolk, Virginia. A very quiet street, small yellow house, but a mountain of lies buried underneath it. Prosecutors say Leticia James falsely claimed that house as her second residence back in 2020 in order to get lower mortgage rates. Well, the same scheme she accused Trump of: inflating value, manipulating forms, misleading institutions. But here's the kicker. When Trump's DOJ pulled the files, they didn't just find one mistake. They found a pattern: signatures, mismatched dates, income misstatements, all leading to the same conclusion: fraud. Now, this wasn't about politics. It was math. Numbers didn't vote. They expose. So when the indictment hit, the establishment panicked. Suddenly, the woman who said no one is above the law became the law's next test case. And the media, well, they didn't investigate. They built her sympathy shrine. But here's where it gets really wild. Enter Sam Antar. This is a name that the media will not say out loud. A man who once helped run one of America's biggest frauds, Crazy Eddie, and then spent the rest of his life exposing others. A forensic accountant who can smell cooked books from a mile away. Now, Antar dove into Leticia James' disclosures, and what he found wasn't confusing paperwork. It was mathematical impossibility. Now, on her official New York filings, James listed the property value somewhere between $100,000 and $150,000. But her reported mortgages, they were between $250,000 and $400,000. This is a loan-to-value ratio over 400%. No sane bank approves that unless the documents themselves are wrong. And so when Antar pulled the title records, he found missing filings, unrecorded mortgages, and one undisclosed 2020 loan for $109,600 that was signed by Leticia James herself. Now, attached to that loan was a second home rider swearing under penalty of perjury that she'd lived there personally and never rent it out. But on her tax return, Schedule E listed as a rental. 0 personal days. Folks, that's not a typo. That is perjury. So when the DOJ looked at the evidence, the math screamed louder than any pundit. Sam Antar didn't expose her politically. He exposed her numerically. So now this is where the whole story collapses in on itself, because Sam Antar didn't just find one lie. He actually found 4 different versions of the same house, each one signed under penalty of perjury. To the bank, it was her second home. To the insurance company, it was owner occupied. To the IRS, it was a rental property. To the state of New York, it was an investment. So what the heck is this thing? 4 legal definitions for the same address. You can't have 4 truths in one document trail. At least 3 are false, and each one carries legal consequences. So this is the mathematical trap. It's not about politics, it is about arithmetic. Because once those contradictions are placed side by side, there's no gray area, there's no confusion. It's fraud, layered, rehearsed, and deliberate. And so this is why the Times and Lawfare panicked. They realized this isn't the kind of story you can just spin with some emotional headlines or some political language. Numbers don't care who you voted for. They expose the liars equally. So what do you do when your star prosecutor is caught in her own paperwork? You distract, you deflect, and you write a bedtime story. And this is exactly what the New York Times did. 2 days after her indictment, they dropped her infamous puff piece titled "In the Eye of a Political Storm, a Tiny Yellow House in Norfolk." Now, that headline alone sounds like something out of a children's book. They painted the scene like a Hallmark movie: the modest yellow home, the peaceful niece, the great aunt who only visits for holidays. Except none of it matches her sworn documents. You see, guys, the Times claimed a family lived there rent-free, trying to humanize Leticia James. But that detail accidentally confirmed what prosecutors already alleged: tax fraud. Because if rent wasn't collected, then her Schedule E form is a lie. And if rent was collected, then her mortgage rider is a lie. Either way, it's perjury. And then the worst sin of it all, they quietly cut out paragraph 9 of the indictment, the section describing insurance misrepresentation. They didn't report around it, they buried it. It wasn't journalism, it was damage control, a crisis PR campaign disguised as newsprint. But the cover-up failed, because the more they tried to protect her image, the more they proved her guilt. The yellow house wasn't a symbol of innocence, it was Exhibit A. Now, if the Times embarrassed themselves, Lawfare downright imploded. So within hours of the indictment, their writers published a desperate article calling the case dangerously weak. But instead of dealing with the actual documents, they launched a personal smear campaign against Sam Antar. This is the man who uncovered the fraud. What was their argument? Well, they're saying he's a convicted felon. You know what that tells me? They couldn't refute his math, so they attacked the man. Classic DC strategy. When you can't disprove the evidence, you discredit the witness. We've seen this time and time again. Lawfare skipped right over paragraphs 9 and 10 of the indictment, the smoking gun sections where her insurance and tax filings contradict each other word for word. They called the case ambiguous, hoping readers would never fact check. But here's the thing, guys. Math is not partisan. It doesn't bend for politics, and every accountant who's looked at those forms agrees they're incompatible. Lawfare thought that they were throwing water on the fire, but instead they poured gasoline. Because every time they called it confusing, more Americans went to whitecollarfraud.com and they read the documents for themselves. And when they did, they saw the truth. The confusion was the crime. And right on cue, Chuck Schumer and the Democrat machine went on meltdown mode, guys. Within hours, Chuck Schumer was on camera screaming that Trump's Justice Department had become a personal attack dog, calling this case tyranny. Tyranny? Over mortgage paperwork? Please. The irony couldn't be any louder. The same people who spent years weaponizing the DOJ against Trump, they're now crying political persecution when one of their own gets caught. But remember, guys, these are Leticia James' own signatures, her own loan forms, her own disclosures. There's no witch hunt when the witch writes her own spell book. And if a Republican AG had pulled this stunt, the New York Times wouldn't be writing fairy tales. They'd be running a 24-hour countdown to indictment. CNN would have panel discussions, hashtags, and live drones over the Yellow House. But because it was Leticia James, suddenly it's complicated. Suddenly it's context. This isn't about Trump's DOJ targeting political enemies. This is about restoring equality under the law. Now, for years, Democrats told us no one is above the law, right? And now that the law is finally staring them back in the face, they're running scared. So now let's talk about the line that really made Leticia James famous. No one is above the law. She said it on her campaign stages, in press conferences, and in every courtroom that she could find while chasing Donald Trump. Those 5 words became her personal brand. But today, in October 2025, those same words are the iron bars that are closing around her career. Because the truth is, she's caught in the same trap that she built for Trump, accused of inflating, misrepresenting, and falsifying. Conservatives are calling it poetic justice. Social media is flooded with clips of her own speeches playing back over footage of her indictment. Trump supporters posting, "We got her," and Trump was right again. And can you blame them? For years, she weaponized morality as a political weapon, but now the receipts are signed. The contradictions are proven and the mask is off. Now, what's even worse, her allies in the media, they're still pretending that she's the victim when every form, every line, every dollar tells a completely different story. So this is not a witch hunt. This is karma with a calculator. And the same crowd that screamed accountability for Trump, well, they just got a taste of it themselves. So here's where it all lands. The New York Times and Lawfare tried to save Leticia James, and in doing so, their articles weren't defenses, they were digital confessions. Every paragraph that they twisted, every quote that they softened, every missing line that they forgot to include, it all exposed them as part of the same broken system that Trump has been fighting since day one. They didn't just defend corruption, they broadcasted it. Because in 2025, under President Trump's America, the truth doesn't hide forever. Documents beat narratives, math beats spin. And when the smoke clears, all that's left are signatures and consequences. Now, if Leticia James is innocent, she should welcome full transparency. Release every mortgage file, every insurance application, every tax return. But if she's guilty, and the evidence says that she is, then justice demands equality, even for the powerful. This is bigger than Leticia James. This is about the American people finally seeing through the illusion. The media isn't protecting democracy, they're protecting themselves. So I'll ask you this. Do you still trust them to tell the truth when it's their own side on trial? Like, subscribe, share this video everywhere, because tonight, the cover-up didn't just collapse, it buried them.